Hi, my name is Theresa Goodrich, and my favorite thing is writing, specifically writing fiction.
Welcome to the Finding Favorites podcast, where we explore your favorite things without using an algorithm. Here's your host, Leah Jones.
Hello and welcome to Finding Favorites. I'm your host, Leah Jones, and this is the podcast where we learn about people's favorite things and get recommendations without using an algorithm. And if you want to talk about people who helped us find things without using an algorithm, it is today's guest. Theresa L. Goodrich is an Emmy-winning author and content creator with a penchant for storytelling and a keen eye. As the force behind thelocaltourist.com, she's dedicated to telling in-depth stories of magnificent, quirky, and unique places. She's slightly obsessed with travel, emphasis on obsessed, with travel and history, and has turned these passions into multiple books, including the Two-Lane Gems series, Living Landmarks of Chicago, Planning Your Perfect Road Trip, and Show Me Shipshawana. Theresa is the publisher of the Midwest Road Trip Adventures and Midwest State Park Adventures. Under the pen name of Theresa L. Carter, she's the author of the Alex Page Cozy Mystery series, which features a travel writer and breast cancer survivor who unwillingly becomes an amateur sleuth. Theresa is one of my OG friends from the early days of Chicago Twitter. Theresa, how are you doing?
I'm great, Leah. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm good. I'm so glad you said yes.
How could I say no?
So Theresa and I met, we're OGs from the original Twitter, Chicago Twitter crew back in 2007, I think, right away.
Yeah, we were the early group. We did in real life tweet ups. So we could put faces to names.
Yep.
And as we were saying before we record, we still refer to some people by their Twitter handle.
Yep. Yep. I have people whose weddings I attended and I blank on their real names still to this day. And now that people are moving to Threads and I'm like, I just saw Mark Smith of us on Threads.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And I was like, who? I was like, oh, that's one God. I still John Morrison. I was like, John, local celebrity. What's his last name?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a long, long time ago.
Yes.
And at the time, so you were already writing Local Tourist before Twitter, right?
Oh yeah. I started back in 2002. And it started like most of these things do. It started as a hobby. And I was actually still working at a restaurant in downtown Chicago when Twitter started, when we met. But then shortly after that, I ended up leaving and making the Local Tourist my full-time job.
Yeah. So you saw the heyday of blogging through that. And you would make, this podcast is all about making recommendations without using an algorithm. And you went to every restaurant opening. I mean, eventually you had a team, right?
Yes.
But you went to and knew about every restaurant that was opening, every show that was going to happen. You were the person, you were one of the people. It was like you, Gapers Block, and Chicagoist were the places you could go to find out what was happening.
Awesome. Thank you. And it was so much fun. I was out probably 6 nights a week because of all of that. And I just had a blast. And yeah, it was wonderful. And just to get to explore the city, it was such a privilege to be able to explore the city in that way and then to share it. And I hoped that at the time that, my enjoyment could translate. And I made a decision very early on that it was only going to be a happy site. That if I didn't like someplace, which was rare, but if I didn't like someplace, then I just wouldn't write about it.
Yeah. Which is that's what Keith Lee is doing now. I don't know if you've ever seen him. He's a TikTok food critic. He's not a food critic so much as a TikTok influencer who got famous for eating at small restaurants and right.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
But he recently was in DC and he only released 3 videos and he was like, well, I went to 10 other restaurants and they are not worth telling you about. He's like, that's not the energy I bring. I'm not going to give you reviews of places I didn't enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, after I met Jim, my husband, he said, I thought he phrased it probably the best way. It's like, I tell people where to go, not where not to go.
Yeah. 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 And you met your husband through it at a tweet up, right?
It was actually through it was social media for musicians at the Chicago Cultural Center. And that was
Yes.
another part of our history together. I went because I was going to be going with a singer-songwriter friend, David Cav. We were taking Amtrak down to Memphis, raising money for St. Jude's. And I was going along as to document everything. And he had a whole team of us who were making sure that everything, he'd have the social media backing that he needed and the promotion. And so I was there to document. So I went to the social media for musicians panel, and Jim was moderating. He was on the board of directors of the Chicago Music Commission. He was moderating. And at the time, I was featuring a local band on the site each week. So in addition to restaurants, I was also going to places like the Elbow Room and Cubby Bear all the time. I didn't sleep.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, he would be a good person to meet professionally. So I stayed after the panel, introduced myself to him. And then as soon as we shook hands, both of us were just like, oh, there was this connection. It still took us another month to actually go out for the first time. Yeah. And then it took us 3 is this a dates before we realized we were dating.
Right.
But
yeah, I remember being I think at Goose Island in Wrigleyville while you were trying to figure out, are these dates? Do I like him?
Yeah. No, we were at Matilda's.
Well, of course we were at Matilda's. What am I saying?
Yep. We were, and he met me at Shuba's to figure out where we were going to go to dinner. And as I told all of you that, you were like, Theresa, it's a date.
Yeah.
If he's meeting you in person to find out where you're going to meet for dinner, then it's a date.
Yeah. At that point, we all had smartphones and there were other ways to make plans. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So those were, right. David Cav, we had so many musicians that we hung out with and saw perform. And it was, I just went on summer vacation with Jackie and Clint, who at the time were both at Ars Technica.
Oh, wow.
So I still have really my 2 kind of circles of friends in Chicago basically are Twitter friends or Jewish friends. And those are my 2 main social groups. And so when people ask, they're like, oh, well, how do you know this person? I'm like, the internet, internet. It's still the internet when the internet was a good place and you could just meet people.
So I met Kara Caravu through MySpace.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was cleaning my bookshelf last night and came across a couple books, one by Jill Soloway, who is now Joey Soloway, and one Hillary Carlip. And they had run a memoir contest on MySpace. And that's when I bought those 2 books, was because I had entered a memoir contest on MySpace. Sold a couple books for them. So there was that.
Nice.
Yeah. So this episode, we're recording in September, but I'm going to release it in October, which is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Because another thing we have in common and kind of our timing was almost in parallel is that in the last few years, we've both have had breast cancer.
Yes.
I'm curious, what was your diagnosis story?
Well, I turned 50 in 2020 and I'd never had a mammogram, which I knew I was about 10 years late, but I turned 50 and I thought, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to check the box.
Yeah.
And part of the reason I waited so long, and I don't know if my mom knows this, but they made her miserable.
Right.
Because they are painful. They are incredibly painful. So I just kept putting it off. Finally got one, just checking the box. And we ended up having to have me come back in for another one, then had me do a biopsy. And then on August 18th, I received the diagnosis. So it did what it was supposed to do.
Yeah. You hadn't felt any lumps or anything. You went in, you were like, all right, we're going to clean bill of health here.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. That was the same for me as a friend had died of breast cancer young. She had the BRCA mutation and she had it in her 30s for the first time and then passed away during COVID when it came back.
Oh, no.
And it was the summer of 21. We had vaccines. So her memorial was that summer. And I was like, I also was late. because they had moved it to 40
Mm-hmm.
and I had drug my feet because I was on, like on the Affordable Care Act plan. Like I didn't really have great health insurance. I have ADHD that was undiagnosed at the time. It was just whatever, the reasons we don't get mammograms.
Yes.
And I was like, well, I'll get a clean bill of health for Lucy's funeral, and did not get a clean bill of health. But it was stage 1, it was early. But yeah, it was that first mammogram, and then you come back and you get like another mammogram and the ultrasound and the biopsy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I felt like I just turned my life over to the hospital for a year. Like I was like, okay, like I have no control.
Yeah, I almost felt, because when I was diagnosed, everything was still shut down.
Yeah.
So we couldn't go anywhere anyway. And my first chemo treatment was the Monday before Thanksgiving of 2020. So I went through it all through Christmas and the holidays. And my last one was April 26th of 21.
Yeah.
So it was every week. And they have different protocols. Like I had chemo every other week for 4 weeks. But in those in-between weeks, I had to go in and get a Neulasta shot to boost my white blood cells.
Yeah.
And then I had another type of chemo for 12 weeks. And that was every week.
Yeah.
It was just because everything was already shut down. I didn't have to, we weren't doing anything anyway.
Yeah.
It was harder for my husband because I at least got to see my medical team. He didn't get to see anybody.
Yeah.
We had groceries delivered. They put him on the front porch. He would bring them in and scan them. He got one of those UV scanners to wand them down, and then he'd wipe them with disinfectant, and I'd have to go up. He'd had me go upstairs.
Yeah.
So that I wouldn't even be in the same room with any potential contamination. It was crazy.
Yeah. I hear people tell stories about like their friends who came with them to chemo, and like sometimes it had a party vibe. And I'm like, Ronnie got to come with me to my first chemo because Northwestern at that point was allowing they would put you in a room for your first chemo, and then the rest of them you were alone. And just with, the other patients and the nurses. And it's very strange to me. So I had 12 weeks of Taxol.
Yeah, that was my second one.
Yeah. Of which I lasted 11 of 12 weeks before it had done so much damage to my current life that it was no longer worth the future benefits.
Wow.
It like destroyed my lungs, and I could barely walk anymore.
Oh my goodness.
So I was stubbornly trying to walk, and like the transportation people would see me and they would just be like, get in this wheelchair. We can't watch you do this. And I'm like, I'm fine. But I couldn't. I would run out of breath in the time it took to fry an egg, like by the end of chemo. Yeah. So it was, everybody reacts differently, never threw up once.
I didn't either.
Right? Hollywood lies. Steroids made me gain a ton of weight, but steroids are fun also. Yeah, but it's wild to me to hear the stories of people who have company during chemo, because it was just such an isolating time.
Yeah, I had just the private room. I mean, and it's just like a cubicle with the sliding curtain.
Yeah.
To keep you separated from others. But that was it. And even Jim couldn't come in the first one. Now he could come in the very last one.
Oh, that's
They let
sweet.
him come to the very last one. But other than that, it was just me. And fortunately, I had all these people kept sending me gifts. We'd have to keep checking our front porch to see, because there were always packages out there. And so my aunt had sent me this cute little pink teddy bear and these slippers. And another friend sent me a blanket and an eye mask. And my sister-in-law had given me these, basically they're little sleeves, and you put water in them and you put this LED candle in it, but the water lights the candle.
Ooh, neat.
So I could have a candle in my room, because you're there all day. You're there for 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah.
I just would nest.
I would, that Benadryl, I was out.
Oh, yeah.
Out.
Yeah.
How has the transition to Survivor, do you feel like you've entered survivorship, or do you feel like you're still recovering?
Yes and yes.
Yeah.
the further I get away from treatment, because I ended up going through radiation as well. So my treatment ended in end of June of 2021. So it's now been over 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the further I get away, the more it feels like a different I mean, I am a different person on a molecular level, but also just because of everything I went through because of it. But it seems like it happened to somebody else in some ways.
Yeah.
But it's still that, like, I was recently diagnosed with diabetes in June, and I found out later, oh, chemotherapy increases your risk of diabetes. Radiation increases your risk of diabetes. So does the drug that I'm on to prevent, because mine was estrogen based.
Same.
Yeah.
Are you on tamoxifen?
Not anymore.
You don't have to say what you're on, but I take tamoxifen.
It's switched now because I'm gone from perimenopausal to menopausal.
Okay.
Full on. So he switched me to something else. And it's the hot flashes and the joint pain and everything. I feel like this whole aging process has been greatly accelerated, and I was not expecting that. I still have this absolute gratitude that I'm here and that I found it.
Yeah.
Plus, there were a lot of other benefits that came out of it. Like, for one, just seeing the absolute kindness from so many people.
Truly. Yeah.
I mean, I would get well wishes constantly. And it just really reinforced my belief that people are good.
Yeah, I agree. Nobody is required to be public with their cancer story. So I'll say that. But when you are public or semi-public about it, you give your community the chance to step up for you. And as someone who is extremely independent and can take care of herself, thank you very much. Learning to learning to accept help and seeing how many people wanted to step up and help. Friends from Twitter, online communities, friends from my synagogue, people near and far, from whether it was like a Grubhub Instacart gift card or like coming here and cleaning the kitty litter for me or filling the ice trays. People really, really showed up and it was really, looking back, I can see a lot of hope in that, like, because it was so, like, it was a hard time. COVID was such a hard time, and it was hard to believe there was good in the world.
Yes.
So it was really, I agree with you that community showed up and showed out.
Yes. Yeah. And I've always been the kind of person that, okay, this happened. Now what? What do I do? And when it comes to something like cancer, there's not, like you said, you're in the doctor's hands.
Yeah.
But I could have some control over how I reacted to it.
Yeah.
And part of that for me, and like you said, it's not saying that, and that you should be public, because that's a distinctly personal choice.
Yeah.
For me, it was because it was COVID. It was just the two of us at home. My parents did come for several weeks to help out, which was really wonderful. But having that public outlet really helped, because I'm a writer first and foremost. And I didn't want to sugarcoat anything as well. So when I would talk about my bad days, but also about the positive things. And then Jim and I did this really fun thing. A friend loaned me a bunch of crazy wigs. Her name's Meryl Morris, and she has all these crazy wigs. And so she porch dropped them, and we did a whole 12 wigs of Christmas.
Love it.
And so each day we, post pictures. We did a whole photo shoot. When Mom came out, she brought a bunch of her jewelry, and we picked out outfits that I could put on each day. And people, they were saying, when I'd post them in the afternoons, usually it's, oh, I've been waiting all day for this.
Yeah.
They didn't know who I was going to be, and then who Jim was going to be, because he was always some new character. He could be a magician or a lumberjack or a rock star. I mean, it was just, it's like, well, this really sucks, but we can have some fun with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. So I think I heard a natural transition point. So I will say, before we take a break, to schedule your cancer screenings, whether it's a mammogram or a colonoscopy. Colonoscopy, the age has been lowered to 45, folks. And I'm getting my first one in 2 weeks.
Good.
Because my oncologist was like, you've been through enough. Like, we don't have to do it yet.
I had one scheduled for September of 2020.
Yeah.
That was one of the boxes I was checking. And then after the diagnosis, we're like, we're just going to put this on hold for a little bit.
Yeah.
But I did get one last year.
Good. But whether it's a mammogram, your dermatology appointment to check your skin, colonoscopies, genetic counseling to see if you have the genetic mutations that bring cancer, the earlier you catch cancer, the more treatable it is, and the more life you get.
Yes.
Back after treatment. So schedule the appointments. They're scary, but they're worth it.
Yes. They worked for us.
They worked for us. Theresa, so I didn't just bring you here to talk about the good old days of Twitter and our breast cancer journeys, but also about your favorite thing. And what might that be?
Writing fiction.
Writing
in general, but writing fiction specifically.
Yeah. So I realized a couple months ago that both you and my friend GP Gottlieb, after you finished your breast cancer treatment, both started writing cozy mysteries. So I'm going to try and get GP on as well. But I want to time travel like back, maybe elementary school, junior high. What are some of your earliest memories of writing fiction? Were you a reader who became a writer? Did you make little storybooks? Like, do you remember your early writing experiences?
There are a couple that I remember. I mean, I wrote a children's book that was very similar to a children's book I owned, but I was riffing on the story. I guess you'd call that fan fiction now, right?
Yeah. How else are you going to learn structure?
Exactly. But I've always been a voracious reader. And at family gatherings, my uncle would come over and he'd say, get your nose out of the book. And my grandma would say, leave her alone. And then she'd give me another book.
Nice.
Because she knew I would be done with that one soon. And when she passed away in 2018, she had all these envelopes made up for all of her grandchildren with the things that we had given her over the years that she'd saved.
Oh my gosh.
Inside one of those was a magazine. It was a laminated magazine that I had made for her back. I think I was like 9 years old, maybe. I know the very backstory. It was for Christmas. And the very backstory was about my bratty little brother.
Sure. This is important information for Grandma or Santa to know.
Exactly. Everybody should know that. And he was bratty and I was a good child.
Yes.
And I had completely forgotten about it. So when and I'd already been writing for years. I'd gotten my degree in journalism in 1999.
Yeah.
But I had totally forgotten I'd created this magazine for her.
I love it.
And but even I didn't write much fiction through junior high and high school. At that point, we're fed all these stories about the starving writer and the garret and how it's torturous and it has to be so hard.
Right.
So I felt like if I'm going to write a novel, then it's going to be this very serious novel and it's a lot of work and effort. And in my early 20s, I had this idea for a novel that was centered around what is now in New Mexico, but it was about the Hopi and when Coronado came through. And so I have all these books now for the research that I was doing for this novel that I spent a lot of time researching, but never wrote. But anyway,
so you have the idea for a historical fiction, do the research, but like your career is nonfiction. Your career is journalism, and that I assume takes you away from fiction.
Well, that particular one was when I was in my early 20s and I was married to my first husband. And then I had my son. So I thought I would be able I'm going to have all this free time. I can write a novel.
Right.
Well, I'm, taking care of my newborn.
Right. You'll write the novel while he sleeps.
Right. Yes. I learned very quickly why that doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
So I didn't start writing. I mean, by the time I moved to Chicago in 2001, and that's when I really started writing nonfiction. I went to journalism school in Indianapolis in the late 90s. And I wrote some essays for a local newspaper. It's kind of like the Red Eye. It's no longer in existence. And then when I moved to Chicago, degree in hand, but I knew I didn't want to work for the paper. Started working at restaurants because I still needed to make a living.
Right.
And then had this idea for the local tourist, which was at the time just a guide to River North. And then it became a guide to downtown Chicago. And then just kept expanding. But
More and more.
I was writing nonfiction for 21 years before I started writing fiction again.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So in that 21 years of where you're writing, you're doing journalism, you're writing nonfiction. Mm-hmm. Are you reading lots of novels?
Oh, all the time.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just like, I've always been a voracious reader. Yeah. And don't ask me to list the classics. Don't ask me to list all the authors or what books are my favorite, or because I will read, multiple genres. Yeah. I just always want a story in my hands. And the kind of, before Kindle, I'd be walking down the sidewalk in Lakeview with a book open and reading as I'm walking to the library to return it and then get a new book and hold it open on the bathroom counter with the toothpaste tube.
Yeah. So you're now writing the Alex Page Cozy Mystery Series. Mm-hmm. Tell me about, how did you get into it? Like, did you write some essays? Did the character just like start nagging you and you're like, all right, I'll write your stories? Like, because you've written like 3 novels in the last 3 years?
I just finished my 5th.
I'm just finished your 5th?
Yeah. In the last 2 years.
Amazing. I'll have to introduce you to Kathy Giorgio, who I interviewed. That might be who you listen to talk about writing. Mm-hmm. She's from the Wisconsin writer.
Yes.
But she is also like kind of writes at your pace.
I heard she's had 15 books in 14 years or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you were writing travel guides, and then the Alex Page mystery started. So talk to me about like, what happened?
Well, so I wrote 2 travel memoirs. My first one came out in 2017 and the second one was in 2018 about road trips. Mm-hmm. And then while I was undergoing, before COVID, I'm backpedaling a little bit.
No, absolutely.
I started writing Living Landmarks of Chicago. So the 2 memoirs were based on month-long road trips that my husband and I had taken. And 2019, we decided we were just going to take a break because those month-long trips are challenging, period. And he's an entrepreneur as well. That meant he was putting his business on hold.
Yeah.
For my dream.
Yeah.
So we decided 2019, we'll stay home. That September, we're going for a walk. And he says, okay, I know you're jonesing to write another book. Because now it was in my system. Uh-huh. And I was, yes, I am. And he said, well, why don't you take all those guides you've written about different Chicago landmarks and put them together in a book? Bada bing, bada boom, done.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, that'll be easy. So I ended up picking 50 landmarks, and some of them I had written about, many of them I had not. And it was going to be more of a travel guide, like to help somebody who's visiting Chicago.
Yeah.
I had the launch party all set up. It was going to be at the Blackstone. In the English room, appropriately enough.
Yeah.
And it was all set. And the launch party was going to be March 16th, 2020. Oh, yeah. So that obviously was canceled, but it gave me time to really take a look at it and think, you know what? One of the things that I was loving about researching these landmarks was the stories I was learning about the people and about the places. So I dug deeper and deeper. And so I thought this gives me a chance to kind of rework this book. Into something that's going to be even better than just a guide that you flip through and say, okay, this is what they offer.
Yeah.
Then I got cancer.
Yep.
So that kind of put a halt to everything.
Yeah.
But when I started chemo, I started writing that book again. I started researching, and fortunately, there are so many digital resources available now. I could do all the research from my chair.
Yeah.
And I ended up finishing that book April 21st. My last chemo was April 26th.
Okay.
Every week I would come in and the nurses would be like, so what landmark did you write about? They would ask me about the status of the book. And I didn't expect them to know. They've got how many patients? So it kept me going. And so when that was done, and though that book was really, truly about storytelling, I'm telling the stories in 2,000 word bites about these different places.
Yeah.
And I thought when I finished treatment, I said, I'm not waiting anymore. I don't know I might start crying. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That diagnosis was a punch in the gut that I never saw coming. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. I have wanted to write fiction. I've wanted to write a novel my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not waiting anymore. And so that November, I planned this National Novel Writing Month where you write 50,000 words in 30 days. And I thought, I'm doing NaNoWriMo this month. And at first, I was planning on writing a novel set in Chicago, like starting before Chicago began. And then having this character go through with all these stories. And then before NaNoWriMo started, I thought, no, I want to write a novel. And I know I'm going to go back to that 20-year-old girl who had a bookshelf full of research and never ends up writing the book.
Yeah.
And I woke up October 28th and I was writing in my journal and I'm going to write a mystery. I read these mysteries all the time. And I'm going to write about a travel writer who's a breast cancer survivor because write what you know.
Yeah.
And her name is Alex Page. And she popped into my head like Athena, out of my head like Athena. And I didn't win NaNoWriMo, but I wrote about 37,000 words and finished writing the first Alex Page book in March of the next year of 2022.
Wow. Sometimes I bristle at like the write what you know suggestion because I too wanted to write, like, I went on a writing retreat. Oh my gosh. In like 2008, I won a prize at Edelman that gave me 5 extra days of PTO and X amount of dollars to put towards like a creative something.
That's amazing.
It was great. And I went to a cabin in the woods in Virginia.
Oh my God, it's a dream.
For a writing retreat with Michael Neff. And there were like 10 of us all working on different novels. And at the time, I've had this idea since like 2003, like winter 2003. I spent the night in Assisi, Italy, and I had a nightmare that I want to turn into a novel about a woman who wakes up in Assisi having a nightmare and finds out she's got the stigmata and like goes to seek help from the nuns. But it becomes like an international incident because an American woman has gone missing and her hotel room is covered in blood. And is she a new saint or not? Like, you know,
I would read that.
Right. I don't know a lot about Catholicism or like I would have to do so much research on St. Clair. Like it was going to be like a modern retelling of St. Clair, who's the other saint in Assisi. And I took that like opening gambit to this writing retreat. And he was like, what are you doing? Write what you know. And I went back to the cabin and knocked out like 3 chapters of like a Jennifer Weiner kind of romance. That's actually about like converting to Judaism because it is what I know.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm saying is it's good advice.
It's a lot easier.
Right.
There is a danger that, and I wondered this when I thought, okay, and that's part of why I was resistant. Like, why making her a travel writer and a breast cancer survivor? Is it going to be too literal to my own life? And the thing is, she's got a life of her own.
Yeah.
She's got a mind of her own. And definitely she's different. She is not me.
Yeah.
They're, very similar. And I have a lot of readers who know me who say, I can see you in her. And, they can hear my voice through her words.
Right.
But they also know that she's not me. So there's this freedom because you can then say things that maybe you want to say.
Right.
I always joke that it's like, you make me angry, you might end up dead in one of my books.
Whoops.
Oops. Don't make me angry.
Now, does she travel to places you've been, or are you traveling places now that you want Alex Page to go?
Only places that I've been because it's funny now when I'm traveling because I'll be like, oh, that'd be a good place for a dead body. And like the first one is set in Door County. And that was really one of the first press trips I did after my treatment. And it really had an impact on me.
Yeah.
The actual places in the book I don't have that many actual places
Sure.
in the book. For one thing, I don't have anything bad happen at a real place.
Right.
So that gave me freedom. And one of the things I have to keep reminding myself is, I don't have to have been to the police station in this town to be able to describe it because I'm making it up. It's still fiction.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't have to have, so I make up like the resort where that was being threatened. And, but the last one was set in Billings, Montana and Southeast Montana. And I really didn't know where the next book was going to be set when I finished the fourth one. And I was exhibiting at the Travel and Adventure Show in Denver, and I was kitty corner from the Billings exhibit. And I taught a writing workshop in Billings. And the person my contact, she was there. And I just remember talking to her. She's like, "Oh, I didn't know you wrote mysteries." And I said, "Yeah, I just started." She's like, "I don't read mysteries." But I ended up emailing her because when we were all breaking down, I remember thinking, okay, I'm ready to write the next book, but I don't know where it's set yet. And I looked over and I was like, and I saw their backdrop and these places I had been. I'm like, that's where it's set in Billings.
Outstanding.
Yeah. So you just never know where now I can't stop the stories from coming.
Yeah. What a great feeling.
It is so much fun. Like I got the proof copy for Chaos in the Canyon on a Friday, and I was going to take a break. I thought, there are other series I want to write. There are different genres that I want to write. I'm going to take a break and then I'll write another genre. The next day, I had written, and I don't outline, but I'd written the outline for the 6th book in the series. And on Sunday, I had the title. And so it just...
She's not gonna let you go.
No, she's not. She's very insistent.
Yeah. When you think about other genres that you want to tackle, what are some of the other ones you want to write?
Well, one of them is an archaeological thriller because I love reading those.
Yeah.
They usually have some sort of a mystical element to them.
Yeah.
So I love reading those. And I've got a couple that were in one of the books that they just really captured me. And like, they are getting their own series. So I've been kind of jonesing to write their story.
Yeah.
And then I've got this epic fantasy that has been playing around in my head for the last couple of years now.
Yeah.
And it's forming, it keeps taking shape. And I probably will start that in December.
Okay.
November is when I'm going to start because I'm going to an author conference in October.
Nice.
And after that, then and it's all about the author conference, is all about mindset. And I'm going to have a lot of time on the road because it's in North Carolina.
Oh,
and you can tell I'm getting excited because I'm thinking a lot faster now. So I'll probably start that in November this year because that one is different. It's got, you have to do all the world building and the magical elements.
I'm curious. This was so I live in a 6 flat and it's the best building ever. And we have a fire pit and we would do fire pits all through COVID. So we could sit outside and we got to know each other. And it was really lovely. And one of the factoids we learned during COVID, during peak lockdown, COVID is still here, was that some people have internal monologues. Some people don't. Some people can see images in their imagination. Some people can't. So I'm curious where you land on that. Like, can you see the scene in your mind's eye? Do you have an inner monologue, or does it all come out on the page?
I see it. I do see it. And when my characters are having a conversation, I usually feel like I'm transcribing.
Okay. Yeah.
So there are things I'll edit and maybe some characters aren't as clear. Like my 2 main characters, Alex and her friend William, those 2, I mean, it's just like, I'm just transcribing. They're living in my head rent free.
Yep.
And I'm just getting them out.
Nice. I love it. So so you're going to a writer's conference on mindset, but your mindset isn't broken. You are so prolific. What are they going to teach you?
There are some people who write a book a month. I don't want to do that.
No.
I don't. I'm publishing these about every 5 months.
Yeah.
And it takes me, because I'm still, my job is still travel writing.
Yeah.
Well, it's about the mindset for being the whole author career because I am independently published
Right.
and I'm avowedly independently published. I have, if a traditional publisher wanted to come to me with 6-figure advance, maybe we talk.
Sure.
But I love having the control and
Yeah.
I make more money with it. And, just I can make all the decisions and I control the timeline and
Yeah.
all of that. I finished my book. It's done from editing. I do the formatting and because I enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's published within a week.
Yeah.
So I don't have all that lag time.
Right.
But this conference is bringing in, we'll be talking about things like the Enneagram and Clifton Strengths.
Okay.
And one of the things that I've been really figuring out since cancer is how I work best and realizing that I'm a terrier. When I get a project, I want to work on the whole project and I want to get it done. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, I hear about these authors who they work on this in the morning and this in the afternoon. And I do that. I mean, I'm creative in the mornings, but mine is more, I'm project based.
Yeah.
So, and this is also a lot of it for me is connecting with other authors. This is it's a new realm for me.
Yeah.
There's with the local tourist, it's basically blogging and being in that world, which I love my travel writing community so much. It's a little challenging sometimes because we only see each other infrequently.
Right.
My best friends that I've made in the last few years is like, okay, where are we going to be in the same place at the same time? And then I'll see them maybe once or twice a year.
Yeah.
But I haven't connected in person with people in the author community.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, I love authors. I have so many on my podcast.
I know.
It all goes back to when Amy Guth and I hosted Pilcrow, that little literary festival we did at Matilda and the Tiki Bar up the street from Matilda. The name escapes me. That my first authors were authors that I met at Pilcrow that I've just have been Facebook friends with ever since. And then one of them was on and her publicist reached out to me and was like, hey, I saw you had one of my authors on. Can I send you other people? And I was like, sure. And then a couple book publicists got my name. And so fully half of the people I talk to are authors.
Nice.
And it's really fun. And so they'll come back when they publish new books or they've just have something else to talk about. And it's been a really fun community to build.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think you'll have fun. I was just curious, I could go to an author mindset conference because I have written 3 chapters of my Jewish novel and an outline of my Catholic novel. I aspire to write more. It's just not, to be a writer, you have to write.
Yeah.
So,
and the way I made that happen for me, because like I said, the local tourist is still my full-time, my job. That's where I make the majority of my income. Now I'm making more through my nonfiction book sales, but it's through speaking engagements and it's through the advertising and affiliates on the website.
Yeah.
So I carve out a half an hour every morning. I get up, I get my coffee, brush my teeth, write my journal. And then after that, then I set a timer for 30 minutes and I write.
Okay.
Because to me, it feels almost like an indulgence because it's so much fun and I get so much joy out of it. Eventually, it will be my full-time, I'm never going to stop travel writing. Because I love that. I love telling those stories and I feel like it's important to tell the stories. And as long as I'm writing Alex Page novels, she's going to need new destinations. So I'm going to have the nonfiction, like, hey, you want to go visit this place? Here's what to know. And maybe people who read, Chaos in the Canyon are then inspired to visit Billings. So they want to learn more about it. Then they can go to local tourists to learn more. So I'm always going to do that. But just carving out that 30 minutes every morning, most mornings, not every morning, but most mornings, that's how I write my books. It's 30 minutes a day.
Wow. Okay.
I just start my day with that. And I feel like I've eaten the frog, but the frog was really, really tasty. It was like gourmet frog legs,
So you journal longhand and then you write on the computer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. It's a good habit, a good way to schedule your day.
Yeah. And it's how I process. I have to write in my journal because it's basically how I process the world. And naturally a happy person and an optimist, but I have down days, especially, with the world and just life and the way things, getting gut punches occasionally.
Yeah.
So I just write in my journal, and that's how I call it my morning pep talk.
Yeah.
Because I start just like rah, 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 rah. And then by the time I'm done, I'm like, you got this. So
nice. Nice. If you want, I don't know if you're taking suggestions for destinations, and I don't know how you feel about flying.
I love flying.
Okay. I just
My first husband was a pilot.
Okay. My summer vacation this summer was, I went to South Africa and I took a train, a luxury train from Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe to Pretoria in South Africa. And there was every lunch and dinner, 4-course meals paired with South African wines.
Oh my.
Day one, off the train at 6 a.m. for a game drive. I saw lions, giraffes, elephants, zebras, living their life. The next day off the train at 8:30 to go on another game drive and see some historical, see the grave of John Cecil Rhodes, who was from De Beers Diamonds and like Rhodes Scholars. He funded that. And then day 3 is just nothing. You're just on this train. There's no Wi-Fi. There's no mobile. You're not allowed to like sit in the lounge and watch videos on your phone.
That sounds like heaven.
So we were playing card games. You're playing Scrabble. It's all international. The 4 of us were the only Americans. And then there was like people from all over Europe, Africa, China, like dress code for dinner. You had to dress up for dinner. They just this summer loosened the dress code for men. So men are no longer required to wear a tie.
Wow.
But they are required to wear a jacket to dinner, I think. Or they are required to wear a tie and not a jacket. I don't remember which. But if Alex Page and her friend William ever need to go on, like, if you wanted to write a modern Murder on the Orient Express and do it in Africa.
That's exactly what I was just thinking.
Of course, if you and Jim need an anniversary trip, it was like just the most amazing thing.
Wow, that sounds incredible.
Yeah. I heard about it on a podcast.
Now, see, I'm thinking that might be a good setting for my archaeological thriller couple.
Oh, yeah.
Their names, Cassidy Devereaux and Reed McKinley. I mean, I even love their names.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things they told us when we were in, I think, Matobo National Park in Zimbabwe, which is where the Rhodes grave is, they were like, anytime you see a bunch of eucalyptus trees in Africa, you know that like it was a colony, because like British, Australians, they would get there and they would plant eucalyptus because it grew fast and it grew straight and you could quickly build from it. And it was a good landmark.
Okay, that reminds Brown County, Indiana.
Yes,
so that's another connection we have. We both grew up in Terre Haute. Brown County, Indiana. And there are lots of yucca plants in Brown County State Park because when they first started settling it, they clear cut all the trees. And so they started growing yucca for food because it would grow in that loose soil.
Yeah.
Because it's a desert plant. So if you see yuccas in Brown County, that's why. So
interesting.
That used to be where one of the early settlers lived.
Yeah. So you could absolutely send your archaeological, you start in Victoria Falls, which is like one of the 7 wonders of the world. And this train, it was so special. It's called Rovos Rail. Okay. I'm sure I will be talking about it on every episode of this podcast for the rest of the year. But it was just the coolest thing. So
nice.
A cool destination. Locally, have you been locally in the U.S., in the continental U.S.? Have you been to Durango and like the Four Corners in Colorado?
No, I haven't been there. I've been to Mesa Verde and went to Mesa Verde, went to Great Sand Dunes, but have not been to, my parents have been to Durango, but I haven't been there.
Because Durango, you also get a little train ride, the Durango Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad. Yeah. So is there, as we wrap up, is there anything you haven't said about fiction, whether it's writing, reading, your approach to it, that if we hung up and you didn't say it, you would be so sad?
It's not specifically about fiction, but about the decision to finally make my dream come true. and to just do it and go for it and know that, like I mentioned, I grew up thinking, oh, it's got to be this big, huge effort and this great American novel. And when just the writing itself brings me joy.
Yeah.
The writing itself is so much fun. And I feel like I've been terrible about marketing because I'm having so much fun writing. It's like the book's done. Oh, I got to write the next one. But that's okay. And I will learn the marketing. This is, even if nobody ever reads these, which is not happening. And I mean, I do want this to be my, I want to be making a living from writing fiction.
Right.
I would still do it.
Well, but think about how satisfying it is as a reader when you come to a new series and you're like, there's already 5 books for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So if your marketing right now is kind of slow, that's okay, because you're going to get readers that are like, I can spend the whole weekend with her. Yeah. Right. Like they could buy all 5 of them and take them, to their cabin and or wherever. So you at some level are giving your readers the gift of being able like to binge read and have many books to read.
It's a gift. It's a gift. Yes. I actually, I have some readers who say they wait until the book comes and they just block out their Sunday. And that's what they do, is they just read the book. But I do have all 5 available as a set in ebook. And then they're not in a box, but you can get them all through as well.
And you've done a really neat job, like making the spines go nice together.
I use a tool called Book Brush.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah. I use that to create the kind of box set look.
Yeah.
And then I've just been using Canva for the spines itself.
Yeah.
For the books, but it's fun. I enjoy doing it. I just enjoy every aspect of it. And I always knew I didn't push the books I haven't really done a whole lot of marketing it as well, because I'm a reader. I know if there are only 3 books in the series or just one,
mm-hmm.
when it's done, I don't want to wait or I'm going to forget about it.
Right.
So.
Well, Theresa, what would you like to promote? Where do you want people to find you online?
Yeah, my website for my books is theresasbooks.com. And that's TheresasBooks books.com. And that's because I write nonfiction as Theresa Goodrich, Theresa L. Goodrich, and I write my fiction as Theresa L. Carter. Yeah. So I thought, I'm just going to do Theresa's books.
Nice.
So I've got all of the books on there. I think I'm currently finishing a nonfiction guidebook to Geary County, Kansas, and also writing the 6th book in the Alex Page series. Although I can say the title now because by the time this is released, Menace at the Marina.
Ooh.
And it's set in Sheboygan, Wisconsin.
Nice. Outstanding.
Yeah. So that'll be out by October. That's my goal.
I love it. I'm so excited for you. I'm so glad we got to catch up.
Me too.
This has been lovely. Yeah. You can find Finding Favorites anywhere you get podcasts. We are on Instagram at Finding Faves Pod. You can send me an email, findingfavoritspodcast@gmail.com. You can find me on Threads, where I'm at Shileah, CHILEAH. Finding Favorites isn't on Threads yet because I'm still figuring it out, but can't really find me on Twitter anymore.
Oh, I should mention Parallel on the Peninsula, the first in the series. The ebook is free on my site.
Ooh, that's good to know.
A little Costco sample for you.
Nice. And also, classically, the local tourist.
Yes.
People should also go there. I mean, we mentioned it a number of times, but well, thank you so much, Theresa. We look forward to reading more Alex Page novels and going on road trips with you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for listening to Finding Favorites with Leah Jones. Please make sure to subscribe and drop us a 5-star review on iTunes. Now, go out and enjoy your favorite things.